From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I'll bet you didn't know that screeched is the longest one-syllable word in the English language. And I'm sure there's a great Saved by the Bell coprophilia joke in there somewhere, but that's clearly above my pay grade to make. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. So pleased you could join us. I am your ruggedly handsome, pleasantly pithy correspondent, and here is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the work week ending Friday, 15 March 2024. Dateline? Hell, I'm not sure. Let's say Dateline Mecca. The infamous former Black Lives Matter activist Shaun King, or as we lovingly know him on the Captain Curmudgeon program, Rachel Dickenballs, whose previous claim to fame was being such a good cosplayer that he managed to convince lots of dumb people that he really was a black dude, announced this week that he is branching out into a whole new and decidedly more hazardous form of cosplaying by converting to Islam. And more on that in a moment. But first, a few words on Mr. King's former profession, because it's a fascinating life trajectory that one has chosen for oneself, a very intriguing career path, when you find yourself in a position where the only way you can restore your professional credibility is by claiming that your mom cheated on your dad with a very, very light-skinned black man, and that's your real daddy, and she never told you about any of this until the day you got busted for being a white dude. What y'all talking about? I ain't no cracker, pecker wood motherfucker! I mean, what a serendipitous series of events that is, am I right? And hey, now that the whole BLM grifter empire has collapsed in on itself like a dying star, it only stands to reason that Mr. King should try to continue his career as a cultural parasite by latching on to whatever current day thing is most fashionable on the fringes of the radical left lunatic fringe, which in this case is being a Jew-hating Muslim. I just wonder if he fully appreciates what's going to happen in a few years when he gets bored of the whole Islam thing and tries to pack it in, because I've heard from a friend of a friend that Muslims aren't the biggest fans of apostasy. So your tombstone might well say, "Here lies Shaun King, a white dude who got lovingly thrown off a building," and that's all I'm saying. Dateline, Rockford, Illinois, Tuesday, 12 March. Congressman and child grooming sex pervert Eric Sorensen, and do I need to say he's a Democrat, or is that just mutually understood, came under fire this week for actively engaging in the organization of drag queen shows for small children. Libs of TikTok reported earlier this week that Representative Sorensen, who also enjoys posting pictures of himself wearing women's clothes, and once sat on the board of an organization that sought to introduce gay pornography books into elementary school classrooms, has devoted much of his time in recent months to the organizing and promotion of events where parents bring their small children and lovingly submit them to being rubbed up on by adult male sex perverts in dresses for the better part of an afternoon. And why does he do it? Because, goddammit, that is how we fight bigotry and extremism. From a February 2023 tweet, quote, "Republicans are feverishly trying to ban drag shows in Kentucky instead of making the schools, parks, and homes safer from gun violence. We have to fight this extremism," end quote. And obviously the way you fight this extremism is by having your 7-year-old stick dollar bills in the thong of a big hairy dude with fake tits. It's just basic common sense. But I'm glad Mr. Sorensen brought up the subject of public works, because isn't that the sort of thing a congressman is supposed to help out his constituents with in a normal world? I'm guessing his office gets lots of calls from real people with real problems that they could use real help with, and I'm guessing there has never been one single phone call saying, "You know, Congressman, I find it just intolerable that we don't have more drag queen shows for kids." If I have reached this judgment in error, then the congressman knows where to find me, and he is more than welcome to come on this program anytime and defend his record at any time of his own choosing. Dateline, Washington, Wednesday, 13 March. In a bit of news that shattered the most fervent hopes of self-delusional leftists across the fruited plain, Rasmussen reported this week that in a hypothetical head-to-head contest, potential Democrat Party saviors Gavin Newsom and Michelle Obama would lose to Donald Trump even more badly than President and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden is on track to lose to Donald Trump. In a poll of 912 likely voters taken on 5 and 6 March, Trump leads Biden by 8 points, misses Obama by 9 points, and Gavin the Gravel Gargler by an astounding 17 points. And you folks don't need me to tell you what a tough spot the Dems are in right now. Biden is the worst president in history. Everybody knows he's the worst president in history. They would love to replace him at the top of the ticket, but the old bastard refuses to go away, and nobody can muster the courage to shove him out the door. Which brings us to the other tough spot that they are in, and her name is the California Cackler. Now, it takes a lot of very hard work to be 5 points less popular than the worst president in history, but by God, she has managed to pull it off. And each time they try to rehabilitate her public images, her numbers just go down all that much more, which is to say, sorry guys, but this is the ticket you're stuck with. You could combine the approval ratings of your president and your vice president and not even get to 70%. Oh, and your convention's in Chicago, and you are already in very deep trouble with the Hamasnik wing of the party because you don't love terrorism enough. So I'm sure there won't be any violent protests at the convention that make 1968 look like goddamn Woodstock by comparison. So best of luck, guys. We're all pulling for you. Dateline, Washington, Thursday, 14 March. In one of the most shocking, indefensible, wildly inappropriate speeches ever given by a U.S. elected official, Senate Majority Leader Cryin Chuck Schumer demanded new elections in Israel this week and the ouster of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And wait, aren't you the same guys who are always telling us that foreign interference in democratic elections is the most dastardly, evil, insidious thing in the whole wide world? So I would be curious to know how you square that in your own minds when you go to the floor of the Senate and demand regime change in the government of a Democratic ally. But let's call things what they are. We know this wasn't Cryin Chuck's idea. We know this was the Biden administration floating a trial balloon that they didn't have the balls to float for themselves. So they sent Cryin Chuck out there to do it for them. Did they consider the most obvious question that would create, namely, what the hell business is it of a U.S. senator what another country's leaders vote for their leaders? No, they clearly didn't, because these are not the smartest people in the world. These are not the sharpest tools in the drawer in the shed. They are not the most politically astute people who ever lived. The intellectual rot in this administration starts from the top, in the big broad chasm of cobweb nothingness that sits between Joe Biden's ears, and it goes all the way down. It was stupid to ever float this trial balloon, as evidenced by the fact that Schumer was roundly and quite correctly criticized by a wide range of voices on both the right and the left. As for Biden, he was heard to say, "Fuck it, I'm going to bed." Dateline Atlanta, Friday, 15 March. Fulton County Judge Cucky McCuckington ruled this week that even after her incredible tour de force of improper behavior and bad conduct, Fani Willis can remain on the Donald Trump case as long as she fires her former boy toy, and frequent vacation partner, Mr. Nathan Wade, Esquire, attorney at law. What the hell is wrong with Judge McCuckington? Well, evidently he is a spineless douchebag who is terrified of being called a racist. So when Fani went into that black church the other week and gave that big old sermon about how she is being persecuted by terrible, awful racists, there was a reason she did that, and it would seem the gambit had exactly the desired effect. Ladies and gentlemen, I've watched a whole lot of trials and hearings over the years, as we all have. And have I ever seen a witness act more improperly toward a judge in a court than Fani Willis did when she was on the stand and faced no recrimination or consequence for it at all? No, I have not. And setting aside the fact that this is all a fake-ass kangaroo court political prosecution, if Fani's conduct isn't sufficient for a prosecutor to be thrown off a case, what the hell would sufficient look like? Does it have to be 3,000 phone calls and not just 2,000? Maybe 7 luxury vacations and not just 6? Lady Curmudgeon and I have been married for 30.5 years. I guarantee you we have never talked to each other on the phone 2,000 times, and we have been on a grand total of 1 cruise. So, by the standards laid out by Judge McCuckington, my wife and I do not have an intimate relationship. Well done, Your Honor. Well done indeed. And that is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the week that was. May it rest in peace. And with that, I toss it over to my lovely and distinguished co-host, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.